And I have a kind of a two-part story, but they're related. So I would be glad to share both of them with you. So the first, I'll take you to October of 2018. I was 29 at the time, and I am uh, standing in LAX airport, and my flight is slightly delayed. So there's that awkward period where everyone who is sitting decided they should get up to go to the bathroom, and then everyone kind of loses their seats and you're all sort of milling about. Okay, so if you're not familiar with LAX Terminal 6, maybe you are, there is the middle section of the terminal is sort of this circle that's like two hallways that wrap around an interior that have bathrooms and those little convenience shops and things. And so when you're at a gate on the like outside edges of those hallways, you really are just in a hallway, and there's people milling around you, both from your flight, but also people like running to get to their own connections, and things like that. So just me in LAX on my phone, talking on my phone, actually, not looking at it, which is kind of funny for 2018, but people milling about. I'm on the phone scheduling a needle biopsy at UCLA for the lump that I've just found in my neck, which I've corroborated with an endocrinologist to, in fact, be a lump that I should be concerned about. So as I took the opportunity in my delayed flight to like get that out of the way. My appointment is scheduled for the morning after I get back, and that's when I'm supposed to go back to work. And so I immediately hop on my text phone instead of on the real phone, and tell my team, which was about 2 people at that point, like, hey guys, I think I said a little bit about having some doctor's appointments, but blah, 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 and updating them about it. And when I come back on Wednesday, I'm not going to be there in the morning because I have to get a needle biopsy. I remember saying there's like a 50-50 chance that this lump is cancer and 50-50 benign. But either way, I'll definitely be having surgery at some point. So the needle biopsy is just necessary. Find out what the next steps are. So I send that off. Of course, there's a message that's a little much, but I realize now that there's no good way to tell someone you have cancer. So you just pick the route that you feel comfortable with, or that you know they'll see, and just go with it. So that was my teammate responded back to me with like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That must be really scary. And I was like, oh, like my heart is pounding right now, but I actually don't feel that scared about this. Like, it's just happening whether I want it to or not. I have a lump in my neck that hurts when I move my head. So like, I just like to take the route where that doesn't happen anymore. And like, there isn't a version that I can go back to. So for me, that was like the moment, the first sorry of cancer was like, oh yeah, I guess things really are different. But that was like the beginning of me just being like, let's go forward. We can only go forward. So really then the second part of that, because that's the kind of change that like happens to you. Of course, it grew in my own neck, but ignoring the intricacies of that, it wasn't something I asked for. But then fast forward to January, after my surgery, successful, helpful, had to do a radiation treatment, which in the case of thyroid cancer is swallowing a radioactive iodine pill, which I did not know was a thing. So I walk into the hospital. I've like parked my car through valet, and I walk in, and there's a very normal waiting room, and it's like the same waiting room that people are waiting to get like colonoscopy. It's like you're all just kind of there together. And then there's this hallway behind the desk, and that's nuclear medicine, which I had never ever thought about before that moment. And so I walk in, and the hallway's actually really light and bright. There's a lot of big windows, and there's this chair at the end of the hallway in front of one of the big windows with this awkward little table in front of it. And there's this little metal, so it sort of looks like a tiny cookie jar. It's sitting on the table in front of it. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's me. Like, I'm supposed to sit there. So they were like, here's where you go. But before we open the container, which has the radioactive pill in it, do you have any questions? And I was like, well, I guess just so that I'm remembering correctly, because I had to not eat salt or iodine for 2 weeks before the procedure. And I was like, when can I eat salt again? Like sea salt. And they were like, oh, in a couple days, you know, once the half-life is kind of over. And I was like, oh, awesome, that's great. And the one guy was like, oh, I bet you're so excited to eat like pizza again. Like that sounds amazing. And I was just kind of like, that's such a funny projection too, because I was like, dude, I can't wait to eat salmon. I am all about this fish life right now. And that, it sounds like such a small moment. But for me, as someone, like the meal train that my friends put together in November before my surgery had been like, I listed out my favorite foods, and it was basically every combination of grains with dairy that you could possibly think of. So for me to be kind of a couple months out of there and just being like, I just want fish and I kind of want vegetables and I want to put salt on the vegetables. Like that was just such a pivotal moment to me. And that was like the internal change, the change within me as opposed to the thing that happened to me. And yeah, I think both of those just really stick with me kind of every day, really. Yeah.